Welcome to Have History Will Travel, where I, your host, the Wilder Historian, dive into the past. Today, let's look at 5 Civil War Union generals you've probably never heard of. The Civil War saw death on a mass scale, and that also involves generals, and they needed to be replaced. This created a long list of men who achieved the rank of general on both sides. I will upload another video soon that goes over 5 Confederate generals you've probably never heard of. Without any further ado, and in no particular order, let's get started. Number 5. General John Newton. Newton was born in Norfolk, Virginia in 1822. He graduated from West Point in the illustrious class of 1842 that included William Rosecrans, Daniel Harvey Hill, Lafayette McLaws, Earl Van Dorn, James Longstreet, and Abner Doubleday, to name a few. Before the war, he was in the Corps of Engineers, and when the Civil War broke out, he was partly responsible for designing the defenses around Washington, D.C. He would soon be put in charge of a division at the Battle of Fredericksburg, and after that military blunder would, along with other generals, contact Abraham Lincoln about their distrust of Ambrose Burnside, their overall commander. He would go on to testify against Burnside in the Joint Congressional Committee on the Conduct of the War. At the Battle of Gettysburg, he was chosen to lead the First Corps when General John Reynolds was killed in action. Later, he would command the District of West Florida until the end of the war. After the war, his engineering skills would be used to clear hazards to make New York's East River navigable. He would pass away in 1895 and buried at West Point. Number 4. James M. Shackleford. Shackleford was born in Lincoln County, Kentucky in 1827. He took part in the Mexican-American War and after practiced law in Louisville. He became colonel of the 25th Kentucky Infantry in January of 1862, fought at Fort Donelson. Shackleford resigned his commission and then formed the 8th Kentucky Cavalry. It was in command of the 8th when he got much of his distinction for helping pursue and capture General John Hunt Morgan on his expedition into Ohio. He took a prominent role in Burnside's East Tennessee campaign and the capture of Cumberland Gap by cutting off the Confederates from escaping to the south. After resigning his commission in January 1864, he returned to his law practice. In 1889, was made a United States judge for the Indian Territory of Oklahoma and became the attorney for the Choctaw Nation. He died in 1909 and buried in Louisville. Number 3. Napoleon Jackson Tecumseh Dana. Dana was born in Maine in 1822. He graduated from West Point in 1842 and took part in the Mexican-American War, where he was wounded at the Battle of Cerro Gordo. He was wounded so severely he was left for dead and was found 36 hours later by a burial detail. After recovering, Dana moved to Minnesota where he engaged in the banking industry. During the Civil War, he fought in many of the early battles of the Union Army of the Potomac and got wounded at the Battle of Antietam. Incapacitated for months, his further field service was lackluster, commanded the defenses of Philadelphia, the Texas Gulf Coast, and districts along the Mississippi River after he had been a major theater of operations. Dana was general agent of the American-Russian Commercial Company of San Francisco in Alaska and Washington, D.C. He became the executive of many railroads and passed away in New Hampshire in 1905. Number 2. William Henry Seward, Jr. Seward was the youngest son of Abraham Lincoln's Secretary of State William Seward. Seward Jr. was born in 1839 in New York. His early years saw him clerking at a hardware store, but he would become a private secretary for his father in Washington, D.C. He helped organize his father's banking house before the war. During the Civil War, he was secretary of the War Committee of his congressional district and in 1863 would be put in command of the 138th New York Infantry. In early 1863, he took part in what reports call a delicate secret mission to General Nathaniel Banks in Louisiana. Not much is known about or what the mission entailed. He was part of the Overland Campaign, helped stop General Jubal Early's invasion and attack on Washington, D.C., and became one of the youngest general officers in the Army. After the war, he would return to New York and the banking house. He would pass away in 1920 and buried in Auburn, New York. Number 1. John Ellis Wool. Wool was born in 1784 in New York, making him the oldest officer to exercise active command on either side during the Civil War. He fought in the War of 1812, where he would attain the rank of colonel. Wool helped remove the Cherokees from their tribal lands on the Trail of Tears to Oklahoma. He took part in the Mexican-American War, where he received distinction for his service at the Battle of Buena Vista. Before the Civil War, he commanded the Department of the Pacific and the Department of the East, where he sent reinforcements to Fort Monroe to keep it in Union hands during the entirety of the war. He commanded the Department of Virginia until he retired in August 1863. He would die in November 1869 in New York. I hope you learned about some generals that you didn't previously know of, and hope this prompts some investigation for other commanders that don't get much attention. Have a nice day, and I'll see you soon.